Welcome to this edition of the Native News Update on this Tuesday, January 18th. I'm your host for today's program again, Paul Demain. Many of the stories right here can also be found at our website at IndianCountryNews.com, and here are some of the news stories for the day from the Associated Press and other news sources, and maybe we'll call it Our Day in Court. Construction at a Mexican-American Cultural Center was suspended January 14th after American Indian groups raised concerns that human remains unearthed there were being disturbed. It was in the best interest of the LA Plaza de Cultural of Arts Center and the community to halt the project, which was being built on county-owned property, President Miguel Angel Corzo said. State Native American Heritage Commission staffer Dave Singleton, who called on officials last week to stop work on the project pending an investigation, said he was relieved. LA Plaza spokeswoman Katie Dunham said the work stoppage covers a small part of the center's 30,000 square foot garden area where the remains from several dozen bodies have been found since October. The site was the location of a cemetery that had been exhumed in 1848, according to officials there. Corzo has said coroner's officials told him that the remains found at the site date from that time in that area and was never used for Indian burials. Indian groups, however, cited records taken from California's historic mission registers that showed that about two-thirds of the roughly 670 people buried in the graveyard were American Indians. A man says he will plead guilty in federal court to kidnapping charges on the Fort Berthold Reservation in North Dakota. Authorities say Kenneth Grady forced a woman to travel with him from Newtown to Parshall on July 13th of last year. Grady allegedly injured the woman by hitting and kicking her during the trip. Prosecutors say Grady has a history of substance abuse and mental health issues. Grady faces a maximum sentence of 10 years in prison. A plea hearing is scheduled for January 25th, and sentencing is set for April 25th in Minot. A youth leader for the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa's suicide prevention program has agreed to plead guilty to embezzlement. Authorities say James Blue received a check from the tribe for $1,008 to fund a trip to Minnesota last summer for himself and other youth members of the organization. The government said Blue failed to make the trip and instead spent all but $80 of the money on personal items and entertainment. He faces a maximum sentence of 1 year in prison. A sentencing date has not been scheduled as of yet. A former Economic Development and Trust Resources Director for Utah's Paiute tribe has pled not guilty to 26 felony charges, alleging he skimmed $176,000 from tribal revenues. Jeffrey Charles Zander entered the plea last week in U.S. District Court in Salt Lake City, Utah. Magistrate Judge Paul Warner set a March 21st trial date and assigned federal public defender Parker Douglas to represent Zander. Zander was indicted in December on 22 theft, 3 tax evasion, and 1 money laundering charge. If convicted, he faces a possible penalty of more than 120 years in prison and $600,000 in fines. Federal prosecutors say Zander went to work for the Cedar City area tribe in 1998 as a tribal planner. 2 years later, the tribal council appointed Zander the Economic Development Director. He was also named the Trust Resources Director and later the in-house attorney for the tribe. A Cherokee Nation judge has overturned an amendment to the tribal constitution that denies citizenship to non-Native American descendants of tribal members, former black slaves. Tribal District Court Judge John Cripps ruled January 14th that Native American tribes can determine membership based on lineage unless that right is limited by law or by a treaty. Cripps says a 145-year-old treaty between the Cherokee Nation and the U.S. government provided that freed slaves and their descendants were to be considered Cherokee Nation citizens, making the amendment void. The amendment was approved in 2007, and more than 200 people filed appeals when told their citizenship in the Cherokee Nation would be terminated. The appeals were treated as one case. The Oklahoma-based tribe's attorney general says it may appeal to the tribe's Supreme Court. Similar challenges are already in federal court. Tohono O'odham leaders have unveiled updated renderings of the tribe's proposed resort and casino in Glendale, which show scaled-back gaming and hotel plans. The tribe had to adjust the plans after Glendale won a legal battle recently, saying about 1/3 of the 134 acres of tribally owned land fell within the city limits. The tribe is appealing that decision, but got federal approval for the reservation status on 54 of the acres that were within the county. The Arizona Republic says the tribe redesigned and scaled back its project to better fit the smaller acreage approved as a reservation trust status. And that's going to be the latest roundup of news from Indian Country on this edition of the Native News Update. We want to tell you that we appreciate that you stopped by and come back again soon. Miigwech.